In my past life, Henry was doing great in business. But after over 30 years of marriage, we still didn't have a kid. He told me not to be upset and said he didn't blame me. We couldn't force a child, he said. I took his words to heart and devoted myself to being his support, taking care of his paralyzed mother for more than 20 years. After I died, I found out he had a mistress and even a son outside our marriage. Henry's mistress laughed at my picture, calling me a free housemaid and a disgrace for not having a kid. Henry, who once said he loved me, called me a hen that couldn't lay eggs, saying I brought him ridicule for half of his life. Living again, I silently packed my bags. If I'm a free maid, anyone who wants can be one instead. Mia, I heard you and Henry went to get your marriage certificate yesterday. How did it go? When will you get it? The voice of my neighbor Kate brought me back from my dark thoughts. Looking at her still black braids and the clear absence of skyscrapers around, I clenched my fists. If I remember correctly, we can get it the day after tomorrow. I smiled at Kate and said, I'm not sure, maybe it'll take a few days. Kate made a face. It's kind of a hassle. I told everyone not to follow the crowd. As soon as there's a call to renew marriage certificates, every family rushed to get one. With so many people, is there a long queue now? I nodded quickly. Yeah. My memory today is all messed up talking to you. I haven't even bought the groceries yet. You go on ahead, and I'll get some groceries. After quickly saying goodbye to Kate, I hurried to the Civil Affairs Bureau. If I don't withdraw the application fast, it'll be too late. Henry and I got married at 18. At that time, there was no such thing as a marriage certificate. Everyone in town basically had a small ceremony to call it a marriage, and we did the same. On our 5th anniversary, a notification came promoting the benefits of getting a marriage certificate. All convinced couples quickly went to get one. Despite not having children, Henry treated me well for 5 years, and I really loved him. So, following the trend, we submitted the documents. But there were too many applying, and the officer said to come back in 7 days to get the certificate. Little did I know that the safety I thought I was getting was actually a shackle. The love I thought I had from Henry was just a slow-acting poison. It's been 3 days since submitting the application for the marriage certificate. Thinking of all this, I couldn't help but pick up the pace, making it just before closing time to tell the officer I wanted to withdraw the application. When asked why, I simply said the forms were filled out wrong, and I planned to redo them because the handwriting wasn't good. The officer was skeptical but said the withdrawn documents would be ready to pick up after 7 days. Though I'd still have to wait 7 days, it was better news for me. At least this way, I wouldn't have to collect the certificate. Having done all that, I headed to the market as usual, picking up a few things for dinner. Then I went home to cook and prepared for Henry, who was working at the factory, to come home. I wanted everything to be like normal until I left. Before long, Henry came back, looking particularly happy. He was dishing me food and asking about the certificate. I casually replied, I asked today, and the officer said there's a lot of people applying, so it might take a few more days. He nodded. All right, then I'll leave it to you to handle. After dinner, he cleaned up and washed dishes, even whistling as he worked. Then he came over in a gentle tone. Mia, there's a bit to do at the factory tonight. They're having me work late, so just go ahead and sleep, don't wait up. I agreed, watching as he changed his coat, got on his bike, and rode off. I have no idea what got into me. As soon as he left, I closed the door and quietly followed him. The town isn't big, just a bunch of crooked, narrow alleys. As it got dark, Henry rushed off, not noticing me tailing him. After about 10 minutes, he stopped his bike in front of an old, run-down house. The door was ajar, and he went right in. The room lit up, and from outside the window, I saw a young woman jump into Henry's arms, acting all sweet. Did you miss me? She asked. Henry whispered something in her ear, making her giggle. Then she leaned into him again. Our baby boy missed you. The curtains were drawn, the room light went out, replaced by the sounds of love. Knowing still doesn't stop the aching in my chest. Henry had already betrayed me. I took a deep breath, holding back tears. After 7 days, once the document is withdrawn, I can leave him forever. I realized I knew the girl, Cora, maybe no more than 18 or 19 years old. She's lively and quite busty, a new worker at Henry's factory. She once came to our house for a meal because she and Henry were from the same village. Henry was handsome, with fair skin when most people had a wheat skin tone. His scholarly demeanor and gold-rimmed glasses made him look intellectual. I thought Cora's eyes sparkled at him from admiration, not knowing they'd hook up. Once I returned from Cora's place, I went to bed early. The next morning, I rushed to the station to buy a train ticket south. Then I went to a store to dial the never-called number of my biological parents. I told them I'd be taking the train to see them after 7 days. They were overjoyed, crying with happiness, only asking for the time to pick me up. With a response, tears began flowing uncontrollably. I was such a fool to choose Henry over reconciling with my real parents. I wouldn't be so foolish again. I returned home, the sky already dark. Henry surprisingly hadn't gone out, cooking dinner and waiting for me. He was full of concern when I walked in, asking why I was late. I gave a casual excuse. I was just out, thinking of buying some yarn to knit since it's getting cold. Maybe because Henry saw the new yarn I was holding, he didn't press me further. Instead, he happily served dinner and urged me to eat while it was still hot. Halfway through the meal, Henry hesitated and said, "Mia, you see how Mom is now. My brother and sister-in-law just had their second kid, and they have 2 kids to take care of. I was thinking, since it's just us, maybe we can bring Mom over to live with us. You'd have someone to talk to during the day." I paused for a moment. The biggest burden was finally here, the thing I found most ridiculous. In my past life, Henry also suggested bringing his paralyzed mother over. He said it would be nice for me to have someone to chat with. At that time, I knew he was devoted, and wanting to be a good wife, I agreed out of love. When I agreed, Henry was overjoyed and even more caring. Even when there were conflicts in the neighborhood and people gossiped about us, he defended me loudly. From then on, I gave him, and even his difficult mother, endless love and patience. Despite the grievances I faced from his mother, I kept telling myself that at least he treated me well. For 25 years, I took care of her, not just feeding her, but doing everything, until I was left sick and worn out, only to leave this world too early. Little did I know I was tied down by his mother, while he was fooling around with Cora behind my back. Seeing me not respond for a while, Henry spoke with a hint of guilt. "I was just suggesting. If you don't want to, it's fine. I'll think of another way." I put down my utensils and gave him a rare smile. "How could that be? You proposing this shows you're a responsible and committed man." I emphasized responsible and committed. But Henry was calm, not showing any sign of surprise, instead holding my hand tightly. "Mia, I knew you'd agree." I casually pulled my hand back and said, "Agreed, but I hope we bring her over in 6 days." He looked a bit puzzled. "In 6 days? Why?" "Because in 6 days, I'll be gone, and this filial duty will be Cora's to bear. As for his mother, I really don't want to see her again. But I just said, our place is small, if she's coming over, we need some time to prepare." Hearing this, Henry finally relaxed. "You're so considerate." The next day after work, Henry was home even earlier than usual. He even brought back my favorite candies. Our neighbor Kate saw Henry riding his bike with stuff hanging from the handles and couldn't resist teasing him. "Ah, you got something good for your wife? I told you, Mia, you're the luckiest with such a caring husband around here." Kate also raised her voice. "Mia, come out quick, your man's got you some treats." Not wanting to let Kate down, I responded and stepped out, just in time to see Henry parking his bike and coming in with the goods in hand. Seeing me, he smiled and held the treats out. "I know you like candies, so I got these for you. Give them a try." I didn't say anything, just took the candies and handed a handful to Kate. Surprised, Kate complimented me again. You picked well, Mia. Even though you two haven't had kids all these years. Realizing her slip, Kate quickly changed topics. Very nice. Unlike my husband, he's clueless about caring. Henry put an arm around my shoulder. Kate, it's more like I picked well, marrying such a good woman as Mia. I shrugged off his hand. The food's still cooking, better get back or it'll burn. Looking at the tofu stew in the pot, I sighed. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, even I'd believe Henry was a loving husband. After all, everyone in the neighborhood thinks it's my fault we have no kids. In reality, I once thought the same. Even Henry believed it until we saw a doctor, who revealed it was him. But to protect his pride, I kept the secret. Looking back, after I leave, maybe I'll leave him another surprise. Henry didn't enjoy that dinner with me. Just as I was serving, a kid rushed in and handed Henry a note. As I served the food, I noticed his expression change when he read it. He gulped, glanced at me, then slowly walked over when he saw I wasn't paying attention. I pretended not to notice and called him to eat. Henry stood still, gathering courage to say, a kid just passed a message saying something came up at the factory I need to handle. I quietly picked up my utensils. Should I save you a meal for later? Henry quickly replied, no need, just eat. I'll be back tomorrow, I promise, just for you. I smiled and looked at him. Sure, go handle your business. Go on, be with Cora. He brushed my cheek with the back of his hand, grabbed his coat and quickly left on his bike. I stood frozen when a paper ball rolled on the floor after he left. I knew it was the note from the kid. I picked it up and opened it. The messy writing was appalling. Saw a movie today, learned lots of new moves, can't wait to try. Wanna? I stumbled back, clinging to the table to keep from falling. Despite being married for so long, I realized I never truly knew him. This was the real Henry. He returned the next day at dawn, tapping on the door before getting back into bed. As he held me from behind, the scent of fresh soap filled the air. It was clear he spent the night with Cora and even bathed before coming home. He was dirty. I shifted, trying to move away, but he just snuggled closer until I was pressed against the wall. With no place left to retreat, I sat up, ready to get up and get dressed. Henry grabbed me at that moment and softly asked, "Why are you up so early?" "Go back to sleep." "Did I wake you?" I didn't give him a friendly look, just replied coldly. He immediately said in a guilty tone, "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come back at this time and woken you up. Next time, if I come back late, I'll just sleep at the office." I used to stop him from saying such things. But now, I just pulled away from his grasp and said, "That's fine with me." Sensing something was wrong, Henry grabbed my hand again and held me tight. "Mia, are you upset because I didn't spend time with you today? If so, you can hit me to feel better." With that, he grabbed my hand and started lightly hitting his face with it. I let him do it until he was done, then took back my hand. I said, "I'm not mad. I just suddenly thought of the couple I saw when I went to submit some papers." Hearing this, Henry got nervous again. "What about that couple?" In the dim light from the window, I looked into his eyes seriously and said, "Everyone was there to reapply for marriage certificates. But the woman from that couple wanted to withdraw their submission. She didn't want to reapply anymore. She said she wanted to separate because the man was having an affair with someone from the factory and got her pregnant." Henry listened without any change in his expression from the beginning to the end. After I finished, he even nodded, agreeing, "That guy is really a jerk." I laughed. "Yeah, he really is. Henry, you think since I can't have kids, you'll find someone else to have them for you?" Before I could finish, he had already covered my mouth with his hand. "What nonsense are you talking about? So what if you can't have kids? You're the one I love. I'd be scared a brat would come and steal your attention from me. We'll be happy together, just the two of us, forever." "Two of us?" It's been 3 for a while now. After Henry went to work that day, I took a few days to handle things. I got my household registry transferred to my birth parents and packed up all my things. I gave the sweater I knitted for Henry to an old man in town with no one to rely on. Even the insoles I embroidered went with it. In short, I gave away what could be given, sold what could be sold, and threw away what couldn't. Once everything was sorted, I was surprised by how many things I had bought for Henry over 5 years. For myself, barely any. Luckily, I just had 2 more days left. To avoid having the submitted documents found, I snuck over to the city clerk's office. The staff sounded impatient. We said 7 days, and that's what it is. Come back tomorrow. Don't worry, it won't get lost. I nodded and left. On my way back, I ran into Cora. Remembering how she was always hanging around Henry made it hard for me to be friendly. So, I just nodded quickly and was about to leave when Cora stopped me. Mia. I turned back. Cora was walking towards me with her hand on her belly and a smug grin on her face. Mia, mind if I drop by your place? I knew no good was coming and refused her. I'd rather not. Say what you want here. Maybe she didn't expect me to refuse. Cora just nodded and said, fine, let's talk here then. Are you here to submit forms for a marriage certificate? I replied flatly, whether I am or not. How's that any of your business? Cora fixed her gaze on me, her eyes smiling. I'm pregnant. Suddenly, I remembered I'd met Cora at this critical moment in my past life too. She said the same thing. But how did I respond back then? I congratulated her and even asked curious questions about the baby's dad. And what did she say? She said the dad was a handsome and caring man. I was so stupid back then. I even congratulated her again before rushing home to take care of my mother-in-law. Even though she flaunted it in front of me, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Before I could reply, Kate, who was passing by, overheard. Oh, pregnant already? Who's the dad? Cora gave me a knowing look, just like last time, and smiled. The father's a big deal, handsome and gentle. You'll all know soon. Kate rolled her eyes. What big deal is both handsome and gentle? Around town here, who besides the deputy manager could it be? Or is he from out of town? Cora's face twitched a bit but quickly replied, yeah, from out of town. Kate just said, thought so. After that, Kate turned to me with enthusiasm and said, Mia, we bumped into each other again? Perfect, let's head home together. Kate's sudden friendliness caught me off guard, so I nodded, sure. And just like that, Kate pulled me along towards home. She was walking fast and only after turning the first corner did she spit out a little. Pa, just because she's pregnant, what's there to be cocky about? I clenched my fist, not saying anything. Kate continued, did you see her earlier? Acting all high and mighty, touching her belly, giving you the evil eye. Just a young thing, but with so much hostility. I bet she's jealous of you. So what if you can't have kids? You're prettier and kinder than her. I remember you did well in school too, right? Didn't you get into college but didn't go because of getting married? She's nowhere near your league. Hearing Kate stand up for me warmed my heart a bit. But I'm gonna leave anyway, so what's the point in dwelling on it? I chuckled and said, no need to bother with her. Like you said, she's just a kid, not worth the fuss. Kate patted my hand, still, you're too kind. Keep an eye on your hubby, though. He's the deputy manager now, young and promising. I nodded, got it. After dropping off Kate, I turned around and went home. The house felt emptier, and so did I. While I was tidying up, I heard footsteps behind me. I thought it was Kate from next door and said, Kate, I've packed up some little things, check if there's anything you like. But it wasn't Kate who spoke. Instead, Cora's voice came through. I didn't want to tell you initially, but now. I turned around to face her. Cora was halfway through her sentence when she started scanning the room, finally stopping her gaze on me. You do know the baby in my belly is Henry's, don't you? I knew. Yet, Her eagerness to confess in this life took me by surprise. Seeing me silent, Cora spoke slowly again. To be honest, a hen that doesn't lay eggs like you would have been kicked out long ago in the old days. It's just Henry feeling sorry for you. I suggest you take the hint and leave him sooner rather than later. I was about to respond, but then I heard the sound of a bicycle outside. Right then, Henry came home from work and saw what was happening. When he saw Cora, he looked a bit panicked for a second, but then he composed himself. "Cora, what are you doing here?" Cora shot me a challenging glance, then pretended to stumble. "Oh no!" She cried as if she were about to fall. Henry was quick. He threw his bike aside and rushed over, catching Cora as she fell right into his arms. After the whole act, he seemed to remember something and released her, saying, "Mia, did you see that? Cora almost fell, and she's pregnant, so I questioned him, "How do you know she's pregnant?" Henry was ready with his answer and just smiled. "I heard it from people at the factory." Cora laughed and chimed in, "Yeah, my man works there. You guys go ahead and get busy. I'll be heading out." Cora gave me another one of her challenging smiles before she left. It was just the two of us now. Henry moved closer, trying to smooth things over. "Mia, you weren't jealous just now, were you?" "I swear, there's nothing between us. I just caught her when she was about to fall." I squinted at him, asking, "You swear?" He nodded, raising his hand. "Yeah, I swear. If I'm not loyal to Mia, if I have anything with Cora, let lightning strike me dead." Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. Lightning strike you dead? If swearing actually worked, and if the heavens were watching, guys like him would have been struck down 100 times over. Henry saw me laughing and moved closer, holding my hand to his face. "Mia, no matter what, you've always been the one I love the most. Without you, I can't go on either. By the way, have the marriage certificates come through? I've already told my friends. Once we get them, we'll celebrate and have a meal together." I said, "Whatever you want. Because, let's be real, we're never getting those marriage certificates." That night, as usual, Henry used the factory as an excuse and left in a hurry. I didn't bother seeing him off and just told him if it got too late, he should sleep at the factory. He agreed but paused after getting dressed, gently brushing my cheek with the back of his hand before rushing out. Obviously, he was off to see Cora again. After he left, I went out too. I needed to get some food for the long train ride tomorrow. While I was out buying some instant noodles, wouldn't you know it, I ran into Henry and Cora. There's a stretch of empty houses along this path, and not many people pass by. I only took it as a shortcut. There they were, in a dim alley, wrapped around each other, kissing like they'd never part. Cora even reached inside his shirt as she kissed him. Henry got turned on and pinned Cora against the wall, ripping her shirt open while cursing, "You little minx, how bold of you, bringing me here." Cora laughed, her face flushing. "Isn't it more exciting here?" Henry squeezed her butt hard and panted, "Did you get this from one of those movies?" "Huh. Little minx. Come clean, what did you tell her when you showed up at my house that day?" Cora giggled, "Why don't you just ask her?" What could I have said? And then they were all tangled up together. What followed wasn't worth watching. I almost forgot to leave, my back plastered against the wall, fists clenched. Inwardly, I felt relieved. Tomorrow, I'll get those papers and leave. I didn't bother with him anymore, headed home, and slept straight through the night. I could have never guessed that as I was about to leave, ready to hit the road, I'd run into Cora. She was all flushed, smirking at me. "How about we go inside and have a chat?" I refused outright. "There's nothing to talk about, I've got things to do." Cora blocked my way. "I won't take much of your time. Unless, of course, you're okay with making a scene right here." I had a hunch about what she was going to say. Taking a deep breath, I replied, "All right, go ahead and say it." She leaned in, lowering her voice. "How was the show last night?" My blood boiled. I looked at Cora, unable to believe it. She continued to laugh. don't play dumb, I saw you, only he didn't. Kate says you're prettier than me, more gentle and educated. But so what? Henry says you're like a log in bed, while I'm the enchantress that drives him wild. Just then, a splash of water soaked Cora from behind. Cora spun around in disbelief, while Kate grinned sheepishly. Oops, sorry, was dumping foot water, didn't see you there. Oh, your clothes are soaked. Better go change, especially since you're pregnant. Furious, Cora glared at Kate but had no choice but to leave in a hurry. I looked at Kate, laughing softly, thanks. Kate sighed, hinting, Mia, don't be sad. All men are the same, sneaky as hell. Sometimes all you can do is turn a blind eye. It's a long life, after all. I kept silent and Kate patted my shoulder once more. Well, you take care. I'm off to my folks. If ever you feel wronged, just come and vent. I'm not good for much, but I can talk a storm. After Kate left, my time was running short. I rushed to the civil affairs office and finally got the papers I needed. But I shredded them to bits after just a few steps, dumping them into a roadside trash heap. Without the marriage certificate officially registered, we were never legally married. Henry, let's never see each other again. Returning home to get my bags packed up, I ran into Henry's big brother and his wife dropping off Henry's mom. They're no angels and certainly more straightforward than Henry. Without asking my thoughts, they put Henry's mom on the bed and dumped a heap of bags, making some excuse before taking off. Last time around, it was the same way. Back then, Henry suggested bringing his mom over, and I agreed. She was brought over the next day. But this time, they dragged it out until today. Not that it changes much for me. I poured her a glass of water and placed it by her bed, telling her I had to drop something off with a friend. Finally, I left Henry's infertility diagnosis on the desk where he'd see it when he came back. Maybe because I was being so cold to her, as I was ready to leave, his mom called out to me with a sour look. Mia, do you even look like a daughter-in-law? I came here early and haven't eaten a thing, and you only give me a glass of water? Don't give me that sour face. You eat my son's food, use his stuff, and don't have to do anything while living a cushy life. Can't even have a kid, huh? What's this? Packing your bags now to run off with another man? I couldn't be bothered to argue with her and turned back to the bed. My mother-in-law's face looked smug. At her cockiest moment, I picked up the water cup beside me and splashed it right in her face. Looks like you don't even want a drink of water. She realized what happened and started cursing me out, but I quickly left. I reached the station with a whole hour to spare before the train departs. I sat quietly in the waiting area, watching as the crowds with bags prepared to head south for work. Compared to them, I felt a bit out of place traveling light. Then it was time to check tickets and find my seat. As the train moved, I said a silent goodbye to this northern city. I knew, after these almost 30 hours of travel, my tomorrow would be brighter. Henry came home from work and as soon as he opened the door, he was hit with an indescribable stench of feces and urine, followed by his mom's cursing. Mia, you witch. Where have you been? Get this mess cleaned up, or I'll tell my son to kick you out. Henry pinched his nose and looked around but didn't see Mia. He headed inside and saw his mom lying on the bed, cursing non-stop. Mom, why are you here so early? She rambled about how his brother and sister-in-law brought her over and then went on a long rant about Mia's wrongdoings. Wouldn't give her a bite to eat and even threw water in her face. Finally, all dramatic-like, she said Mia must have run off with a man due to being gone so long with her things. Henry stayed silent, getting anxious. As he cleaned his mom, he thought about it. Maybe Mia went out to shop for sewing supplies to make him new shoe soles, or buy fabric to sew new clothes. She's great at it, her work is better than store-bought. But as he tidied up and opened the window, he saw a medical diagnosis on the desk. It had his name on it and the words infertile. In that moment, he remembered Cora, touching her belly, claiming it was their son, and Mia's indifferent look in the empty home. Fear hit him, worried she'd found out, and now he might never find her. Yet he hoped she didn't know that the paper was placed there unintentionally. But it was so neatly placed, it couldn't have been an accident. His mom kept on complaining loudly enough for the whole street to hear. He ignored her and started searching the house like a madman, cabinets, wedding chests, under the bed, nothing. Not a single trace of Mia's stuff, not even a thread. The sweater she knitted, the insoles she embroidered, new clothes that hadn't been worn, even the bowls in the kitchen, her hairbrush, all missing. Just then, Kate from next door came in. "What's that smell?" "Oh, you brought your mom over." "Where's Mia?" "I just finished something at my folks' place." His mom snapped, "Don't mention Mia. Who knows where she ran off to?" Henry, desperate, asked, "Kate, did you see Mia today? Do you know where she went?" Kate thought for a moment and nodded. "I did see her early this morning, talked to her and someone else." "Who?" Henry asked anxiously. "Cora, you know, the one who's been to your place for dinner. She was all sly, saying lots to Mia." Henry had a bad feeling, pressed on, "What did they say?" Kate hesitated, "I really don't know much. Better wait for Mia to get back and ask her." Henry broke down, "Mia's gone, Kate. Please, please tell me what happened." Kate sighed. Mia's had a tough life, lost her family young, and had it rough with adoptive parents too. "But Henry, why did you do such a foolish thing?" Then, Kate told him everything she saw and heard that day. Henry felt all strength leave him, stumbling back and collapsing in pain. So that's it, he thought, that's what happened. How could Cora be so bold, stirring trouble for Mia like that? He never imagined Mia saw what happened between him and Cora in the alley the night before, and it was all Cora's doing. His chest tightened, repeating to himself, "She won't be gone, she can't be." He then asked Kate again, "Did Mia tell you where she was going?" Kate shook her head, "I don't know. She seemed normal lately, even chatting with me cheerfully this morning." "Oh, I did see her by the Civil Affairs office the other day. Maybe you should check there." Hearing this, Henry rushed out the door. Yes, the Civil Affairs office. They hadn't gotten their marriage certificate yet, but their application was in for a while. It must be ready. So even if she's gone, he at least had that, and maybe, just maybe, he'd find her there. She was the one who insisted they get the paperwork done. She must be there. When Henry reached the Civil Affairs office, it was just closing. He stopped an employee to ask about the marriage certificate. After mentioning the date, they said it was picked up a few days ago. Henry held on to the hope that Mia had taken it to surprise him. But as he was leaving, the worker remembered, "Hey, you're the deputy manager, right?" "Yes, that's me. Your spouse actually came in today. She took the incorrectly filled materials to resubmit them. This time it'll be quicker. With everything ready, it can be done in a day. Last time there were too many people redoing theirs, so it took longer." Henry was stunned again. "What did you say?" "The paperwork was taken away because it was filled out wrong?" The staff member repeated, "Yeah, 7 days ago, your wife came to withdraw it. We had so many papers at the time, a huge stack, plus other stuff to deal with. We told her to come back in 7 days to pick it up." Henry thanked the staff, but everything in front of him seemed to go black. As he stepped back, he accidentally kicked a pile of cemented trash and stumbled. If it weren't for his hand hitting the mid-high cement wall, he might have fallen. But leaning like that, he noticed shredded paper in the trash can, with a torn photo of Mia attached. At that moment, it was like he found a treasure. He eagerly bent down and started picking up the shredded pieces. Some were buried in the trash, but he didn't mind and crouched there to find them. After about an hour of searching, he finally found all the pieces. He pieced them together, and it was the document they had submitted. He checked it repeatedly, everything filled out was correct, no mistakes at all. That's when he finally understood, they didn't even have a marriage certificate anymore. Where could his Mia possibly be? That night, Henry left his paralyzed mother to search for Mia across town. But no matter how much he roamed the streets and even asked the nearby villages, no one had seen his Mia. Walking back home, he remembered the vows he made to Mia on their wedding day. He promised to love only her for the rest of his life and never betray her. Even when she said she couldn't have children, he vowed that his love for her wouldn't change. What did Mia say back then? She said she'd also only love him for life, and if he ever betrayed her, she'd never forgive him and disappear from his world entirely. The girl he vowed to protect from day one, he lost her. When did he start being so foolish? Maybe it began when they couldn't have kids, drinking with his colleagues. They all had kids, some with sons and daughters. Saying he wasn't envious would be a lie, but it didn't change his love for Mia. Later, when his mother accidentally fell off the mountain and became paralyzed, she started bringing up kids repeatedly. Until she introduced Cora to him, saying she was a distant cousin who wanted to work at his factory and needed his care. What did Mom say about Cora when introducing her? She said a wife should be like Cora, big hips, large chest, good for bearing children. Then Cora started working at the factory with him, always wanting to be near him, sweetly calling him brother and secretly sneaking food to him. Until one overtime evening, she boldly sat on his lap, saying she didn't want a title, just to have his child. Like a fool, he went along with it. And countless times after that, he couldn't resist the temptations, slowly falling into Cora's embrace. He truly loved Mia, yet found himself drawn in by Cora's teasing. He thought he could keep it all a secret, but in the end, he was the fool. Right, he really was a fool. He even found out the child he longed for wasn't even his. Returning home heartbroken, Henry saw a woman sitting by his mother's bed. The woman was feeding his mother, and for a moment, it felt like what happened before. Like all those times Mia had fed and cared for his mother. He felt hopeful, rushing over and calling out, "Mia, you finally came back." But when she turned, it was Cora's face. Cora smiled and greeted, "Henry, you're back. Mother said she hadn't eaten all day, so I came to feed her." His mother was still blaming Mia. "Son, I'm telling you, what's so great about Mia? Not half as good as Cora. Cora told me she's over 3 months pregnant, wouldn't it be great? The other one left, so just marry Cora." Cora blushed, playfully scolding, "Auntie, don't say that." Looking at Cora made Henry remember everything Kate said and all the recent events with Mia. He couldn't fathom Mia's feelings dealing with him. She must have been so sad and exhausted, completely hopeless. That's what her gaze meant then, hopelessness, the greatest sorrow. He laughed, stumbling back a couple of steps, and said to Cora, "Fine, let's marry her." His mother rejoiced, "That's right. A couple needs a child. How else can life go on?" Initially, he wanted to kick this woman out, far away, since if it weren't for her, Mia wouldn't have left. But now, looking at his mother, he changed his mind. The way to punish someone isn't to push them away, but to chain them hard, making life unbearable. The day after Mia left, Henry finally heard news of her. Someone saw her at the train station, sitting in the waiting room for a train heading to Guangdong. He figured she must be going to find her biological parents. The next day, Henry married Cora, and before the marriage certificate even cooled, he boarded a train heading south to find Mia. After a bumpy 30-hour ride, he finally arrived. The place was much better than the north, economically and infrastructure-wise. But amidst the crowd, he felt lost, unsure where to start looking for Mia in such a vast area. But he swore, if he couldn't find her in this lifetime, he wouldn't give up. In the end, he really did search for her his whole life. On his deathbed, lying on a street wrapped in a dirty, tattered coat, he slept on the roadside. Some passers-by found him pitiful and tossed a couple of coins in front of him, while others with children made a point to avoid him. For over 20 years, he wandered the streets, homeless, roaming all over New York City. Eventually, considering she might think of looking for him there in New York, he walked across the country, never finding her trace. Now, he was dying but had no desire to return home, wanting only to stay in this place she might have left behind. That night, Henry had a dream. He dreamed of a different life. In the dream, Mia still loved him so much. She did his laundry, cooked for him, and took care of his paralyzed mother. Even when facing his mother's harsh treatment, she remained gentle. She stuck by him through thick and thin, handling everything at home while he dealt with work pressures. But what did he do? He climbed the ladder from deputy factory director to director. He transferred from a small factory to a bigger one and then jumped into business, making a ton of money. Eventually, he drifted away from her. He stopped being kind to her, treating her like a free maid. He claimed he was too busy with work and started a new family with Cora. She passed away in her 50s, worn out from all the hardships. Yet, he pointed at her picture and said her death was convenient since he didn't have to be criticized for not having kids anymore. When he woke up, he used what little strength he had and slapped himself hard. How could he be such a monster, such a horrible person? As he closed his eyes, he noticed an ad on a tall building. The face on the ad was someone he could never forget. After all these years, she hadn't changed a bit. She was still beautiful and gentle, but now with a touch of elegance and intelligence, embodying the image of a successful woman. His hands trembled as he held the only, now yellowed, photo he painstakingly pieced together. He murmured, "Mia," and breathed his last. The next morning, news spread all over town about a homeless old man found dead. Police came quickly to handle the body, but during the process, they noticed a photo in his hand. Someone sharp-eyed recognized it as an old picture of the successful businesswoman Mia and reported it to her. When Mia got the photo, she just glanced at it, then told her assistant to set it on fire and toss it in the trash. "Don't know him," she said. Later, people dug up information about the homeless old man. Rumor had it he was from the north and was once a respectable deputy factory director. Then one day, out of nowhere, he vanished, leaving behind his paralyzed mother and newlywed wife. What followed was a familiar story of a homeless man. Curious folks dug deeper and learned he was no saint either, having abandoned his wife to marry his lover. But after marrying his lover, he vanished again without a trace. Passers-by asked, "And the lover?" The one investigating shrugged, saying, "She stayed, taking care of his paralyzed mother, dreaming of being a wealthy wife." But without him returning, and legally married, she had no choice but to stick with the in-laws. Unfortunately, the mother-in-law passed quickly due to hardship, and it turns out the lover's child wasn't his. The real father showed up demanding money, claiming the arrangement was to pay him hush money every month during the pregnancy. When the money ran out, they fought, the lover was accidentally killed in the street, and the real father went to jail. A bystander sighed, "Poor kid." The investigator spat, "Nothing to pity. It's the first wife who's pitiful." All these years, her fate remains unknown. Although, that first wife looked a lot like the businesswoman Mia. Another bystander chimed in, "Beautiful women look alike." Everyone looked up at the confident, elegant woman in the ad and then thought of the dirty, smelly homeless man. They let go of their fleeting fantasy. A businesswoman and a homeless man? What a joke. They were worlds apart.